Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great honor to speak here today, even if only through this screen. And I'd like to begin by sincerely thanking to the conference committee for inviting me to deliver this plenary. The theme of this year's conference, Move and Thrive in an AI World, could not be timelier, as we find ourselves navigating both the opportunities and the challenges that come with rapid technological change. In my talk, Rehumanizing Digital Technology in Health and Physical Education, I want to explore how we can ensure that technology serves our human purpose, supporting meaningful movement, connection and learning, rather than the other way around. My name is Ove Østerli and I am an associate professor at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology in Norway and an adjunct associate professor at the Griffith Institute for Educational Research in Brisbane, Australia. Griffith University and I acknowledge the people who are the traditional custodians of the land. We pay our respect to the elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Across education, the question is no longer whether digital technology and AI will change teaching. It already has. Classrooms, curricula, and professional practices are being reshaped in ways that were unimaginable just a few years ago. The real question now is how these changes will shape us as teachers, as learners, and as communities of practice. So, can AI make us more human? That is the paradox we face. A technology capable of simulating cognition, dialogue and creativity, yet one can force us to reconsider what it truly means to think, care and teach. The challenge is not to resist technology, but to ensure that in adapting it, we do not lose sight of the very qualities that define education at its best: empathy, judgment, and human connection. UNESCO's 2025 report, AI and the Future of Education, states it clearly. AI is reshaping how we learn and teach, but unequally. While cutting-edge AI models empowers some learners, educators and systems, nearly 1/3 of humanity still remains offline, excluded from the benefits of digital innovation. The report warns that without deliberate policy and ethical stewardship, these disparities will deepen, entrenching existing inequalities rather than bridging them. UNESCO organizes its analysis around the three interconnected lenses: disruption, dilemmas, and directions. Together, they illuminate both the transformative promise and the moral complexity of AI in education. The message is clear. Progress cannot be measured by technological sophistication alone. Education must remain a public good, grounded in an ethic of care, guided by teacher centrality and oriented towards human flourishing. This is not just an educational issue. The same tension runs through every corner of society. In Humanizing the Digital Workspace by Aurel and colleagues from 2025, leaders and researchers ask a profound question: can digitalization amplify our humanity or diminish it? The answer, they suggest, depends not on the tools themselves, but on the values, relationships, and purposes that guide their use. That question lies at the heart of our own field, health and physical education, a domain that is fundamentally embodied, relational, and contextual. Here, learning happens through movement, dialogue, and shared experiences. When technology enters this space, it doesn't just change how we teach, it changes what teaching is. So, today I want to explore this evolving relationship between the digital and the human through 5 lenses, drawn from recent research, practice, and reflection. Across these lenses, I'll suggest how we might move beyond digital replacement, where technology substitutes for human interaction, towards digital rehumanization, where technology becomes a catalyst for empathy, agency, and connection in physical education. In one of our studies, we invited physical education, teacher education students to use virtual reality as a tool for reflecting on their teaching practice. One of them captured the experience perfectly, saying, "It's like being there, but not in the way." That short sentence says a lot. VR placed them in the lesson, yet at a distance that enabled pause, replay, and analysis. It offered a new kind of reflective space, immersive, controlled, and rich in detail. Through VR, students could observe lessons from multiple perspectives, noticing body language, movement patterns, and classroom interactions that would otherwise escape attention, much like the AI-supported assignment design that David Gao presented earlier today. These technologies opened up new cognitive and visual entry points for reflection. They help future teachers see and think differently. Yet something vital remained absent. The embodied cues, the social energy, and the relational nuances that animate real teaching were flattened. The technology-mediated experience but could not replicate the immediacy of being with students, the subtle sensing and attunement that lie in the heart of pedagogy. This tension echoes Chad Killian's recent editorial, "Resist the Temptation to Just Roll Out the Boats." He cautions that when we delegate too much of our reflective and decision-making work to algorithms, we risk surrendering the human intentionality that defines good teaching. Reflection becomes procedural rather than purposeful. So, VR and by extension AI can indeed enrich reflection, but only if we keep pedagogical purpose and human presence at the center. The technology may extend our vision, but meaning emerges only through the eyes, judgment, and empathy of the teacher behind the headset. The next lens traces the long arc of flipped learning in physical education. In its early stages, flipping was primarily about technology, video lectures, recorded demonstrations, and moving content deliberately outside classing time. Pedagogy often followed technology, not the other way around. The focus was on efficiency, getting through content faster, freeing up lesson time. But over the years, flipped learning in PE has evolved into something far more relational. As teachers gained confidence and digital fluency, the focus shifted from delivering material to cultivating interactions, dialogue, and reflection. Our recent review shows how teachers' practices have matured from flipping content to flipping relationships, creating space for conversation, co-construction, and inclusive engagement. The digital layer became not a wall, but a bridge. This evolution echoes Emma Jackson's message earlier today: AI can enhance learning when used critically and creatively, not when it replaces human judgment or presence. The flipped classroom becomes most powerful when it deepens rather than diminishes the human connection that sustains learning. Interestingly, this pedagogical shift also resonates beyond education. In workplace studies, Orell and colleagues argue that humanizing digital work depends on sustained iterative adaptation, a continuous process of learning, reflection, and renewal. The same is true here. Rehumanization in PE is not a technological upgrade or a single intervention, but a gradual evolution of practice shaped by feedback, relationships, and time. In this sense, rehumanization is not an outcome but a trajectory, a process of becoming that unfolds through sustained reflection, dialogue, and shared growth. In another project, we explored co-creation in PETE, designing and redesigning courses with students rather than for them. Together, we shared decisions about course structure, tested new digital modules, and engaged in continuous cycles of reflection. This collaborative process required time, trust, and willingness to redistribute power, but it also generated richer engagement and deeper professional learning. As Susie, Hewitt, and Pill demonstrated in their presentations today, relational teaching approaches such as reciprocal and self-checked styles cultivate precisely these qualities: agency, ownership, and responsibility for learning. Co-creation operates in the same spirit, positioning students as knowledgeable partners who bring diverse perspectives and lived experiences into the design of digital pedagogy. This also connects directly to UNESCO's broader dilemmas around digital transformation. Who gets to shape the practices of AI and educational technology? When students are invited to co-create, they move from being passive users of institutional systems to active co-designers of their own learning environments. Their voices help define not only how technology is used, but why it matters. Ultimately, this is how digital practice becomes human, when they are built with students, not merely for them. Zooming out to the broader field, our scoping review of digital technology in physical education teacher education from 2010 to 2023 revealed a fragmented and uneven landscape. While innovation is abundant, it often remains disconnected, project-based, and short-term in scope. Most studies focused on single tools, particularly video, mobile apps, and or online learning environments, without sustained attention to pedagogical integration, equity, or teacher readiness. This pattern reflects a wider issue in educational digitalization, as UNESCO cautions. When innovation occurs in isolated pockets without systematic alignment or ethical reflection, it risks amplifying rather than reducing inequities. Access, competence, and cultural relevance becomes unevenly distributed, reinforcing the very divides technology was meant to bridge. Killian expresses a similar concern within physical education. We may end up creating technology-polished but pedagogically hollow versions of PE. Instruction that appears efficient, data-rich, and scalable, yet stripped of its relational and embodied depth. Such versions prioritize performance metrics over meaning and delivery over dialogue. Rehumanization, therefore, cannot be achieved through isolated digital experiments. It demands a systematic and a sustained strategy, one that embeds technology with long-term ethical and inclusive frameworks. This involves not only preparing teachers to use digital tools, but also cultivating the professional judgment, critical reflection, and moral purpose needed to use them well. The conceptual foundation for all this is entangled pedagogy. As Tim Fauns in 2022 argues, pedagogy and technology cannot meaningfully be separated. They are always mutually constitutive and intertwined with the broader context in which learning occurs. Teaching, practice, tools, environments, and values shape one another in complex and dynamic ways. This means that when we integrate technology in education, we are not merely adding tools to existing pedagogies, we are transforming the very nature of teaching, learning, and interaction. Entangled pedagogy thus invites us to examine not just what technology do, but how they come to matter within ethical, cultural, and institutional contexts. In short, Fauns argue that pedagogy and technology cannot be separated. They are always entangled with context, values, and ethics. Calderon and Sargent in 2025 apply this thinking directly to physical education, showing that the impact of digital technology depends on three interrelated dimensions: purpose, context, and value. Technology, in their view, is never neutral. It becomes meaningful only through the intentions that guide its use and the educational relationship it helps to sustain. A digital tool may enhance reflection, motivation, or inclusion, but only if those human purposes are clearly defined and ethically grounded. We see striking parallels beyond education as well. In humanizing the digital workspace, Orel and colleagues remind us that digitalization is always value-laden. It is not the technology itself that humanize or dehumanize, but the social and relational practices surrounding it. Systems, platforms, and algorithms carry the trace of the choices and assumptions that build them, and of the people who use them. This is also what Killian means when he warns against simply rolling out the bots. His argument is not a call to reject AI, but an invitation to reclaim intentionality, care, and human agency. The challenge, then, is not whether to use technology, but how to do so in ways that extend rather than erode the relational core of teaching and learning. Today's conference contributions exemplify this balance. Emma Jackson and Taylor Crowther showed how AI can deepen learning and reflection when used critically. David Gao demonstrated AI as a scaffold for teacher decision-making, not a replacement. Brendan Susi, Mitch Hewitt, and Shane Peel illustrated how technology, when embedded in sound pedagogy, strengthens relational learning. Together, these talks show that we are not passive in this digital turn. We are co-authors of what it becomes. So, across these lenses, and in the light of both the UNESCO framework and Killian's arguments, I see three key principles for rehumanizing technology in physical education. The first one is to entangle with pedagogy. Technology should not be treated as an add-on or a novelty layered on top of existing practice. Instead, it must be thoughtfully woven through the pedagogical fabric, through relationships, values, and the lived realities of teaching and learning. This means asking not what a tool can do, but how it interacts with the human dimension of teaching: trust, motivation, and meaning-making. The second principle is to evolve over time. Rehumanizing technology is not a one-off design or decision, it is an ongoing, reflective practice. Teachers must build sustainable, iterative practices that allow for adaptation and critical evaluation over time. As contexts shift, so too should our uses of technology, guided by curiosity, care, and the evolving needs of learners. The third one is co-create with students. Humanization happens when learners share agency in shaping their own experiences with technology. By engaging students as co-designers, collaborators, and reflective partners, we move beyond passive consumption towards participatory learning cultures. This co-creation foregrounds dialogue, empathy, and collective sense-making, qualities central to the human condition. Together, these principles echoes UNESCO's global call for human-centered digital transformation, Fawn's conceptualization of entangled pedagogy, and Killian's defense of human-driven physical education. They converge on a single message: technology can extend our capacities and enrich our pedagogical practice, but only when it's guided by the human care, ethical judgment, and purposeful intent. To end, let me return to UNESCO's reminder. Education must remain a public good, entangled with AI, yeah, but ultimately defined and dignified by our shared humanity. This statement captures the essence of what rehumanizing education truly means. It is not a rejection of technology, but a reaffirmation of the human purposes it must serve. Artificial intelligence and digital tools may help us extend access, personalize learning, and augment reflection, but they must never redefine what it means to educate or to care. As Killian powerfully writes, the ease and temptation of rolling out the bots should never outweigh the obligation to show up every day with our full human presence. In other words, the moral and emotional labor of teaching, the listening, noticing, and the responding that makes learning possible, cannot be automated. These are the gestures through which education retains its humanity. And perhaps physical education, precisely because it is relational, embodied, and inclusive, can lead the way in showing how to humanize the digital. It reminds us that learning is not just cognitive, it is also social, physical, and deeply human. So not to replace the teacher, but to reclaim the human in the digital age. Before leaving, I want to acknowledge the thinkers and colleagues whose works runs through everything I have shared today, both in the literature and in this very conference. Tim Fawn's idea of entangled pedagogy reminds us that teaching and technology are never separated. UNESCO's 2025 report calls for education that remains a public good, rooted in care and teacher centrality. Chad Killian urges us to resist simply rolling out the bots and to stay fully human in our presence. Calderon and Sargent show that impact deepens our purpose, context, and value. A message echoed here today by Emma Jackson and Taylor Crowther, who showed how AI can deepen reflection when used critically, by David Gao, who demonstrated how AI can scaffold teacher judgment rather than replace it, and by Brendan, Susie, Mitch Hewitt, and Shane Peel, who illustrated that technology, when embedded in sound pedagogy, strengthens relational learning. These colleagues, alongside the broader research community, reminds us that humanizing technology is not a solitary project, it's a shared endeavor across our field. So with this, I would like to say thank you so much for your attention.